Hello mga kapatid. I'm here again, Fem's Wall. Welcome to Fem's Wall, mga kapatid. Now I'm going live in our Bible study. Kasi wala na naman po akong time mag-edit. Busy na naman po ako bukas, kaya pagpasensyahan nyo na lang muna ang live ko. Wait see. What's happening with my cell phone? Anyway, what's going on here? Anyway, our lesson is on Genesis chapter 31 and 32. Ito po yung although I will be coming from chapter 30 verse babalik po ako sa verse verse 25, kasi yung background po ng pag-alis ni Laban ito. So dito po yung umalis si Jacob sa Padan Aram but before na umalis siya, humingi siya ng kanyang wage kay father-in-law, kay Laban. Now, ano po yung naging wage niya? Sabi po ni Laban, "Tell me your wage." Sabi ni Laban sa kanya, sabi niya, "Don't give me anything. Pero, just do one thing for me." Sabi niya, "I'll continue to tend your and watch your flocks." And then doon niya ini-separate yung kanyang yung mga speckled, mga spotted and streaked flocks, yung mga sheep sa mga flocks ni Laban. Okay? And of course, doon na naman po siya nagkaroon ng mga yung how he did it. Yung paglagay niya ng poplar, almond and plane trees sa sa feeding trough ng mga sheep. Hindi po tayo shepherd, kaya hindi po natin alam yun, but according to the Bible, ito po yung ginawa ni Jacob as a way to acquire possessions or sheep, yung mga flocks niya. And of course, wala namang bago dito, kasi of course it is always and has been a trickery ulit sa side niya. Okay, and then after that, nag-increase na nga yung wealth niya, naging mayaman na siya. Meron na siyang, sabi po sa chapter 30 verse 43, sabi, "As a result, Jacob became very wealthy with a large flocks of sheep and goats, female and male servants, and many camels and donkeys." So naging mayaman siya, And then that time sa chapter 31, napansin ng mga ibang anak ni Laban na mayaman na yumaman na masyado si Jacob. And then of course, nainggit sila. And then napansin din ni Jacob na nag-iba yung attitude ni Laban sa kanya. And so of course, sino ba namang hindi makiramdam, And then the Lord told Jacob na bumalik sa Canaan. "Return to the land of your father and grandfather and to your relatives there, and I will be with you." Sabi ng Panginoon kay Jacob, So yun ang ginawa ni Jacob. He called his two wives and his children. Now, take note na ito yung iniutos ng Panginoon, ano? At walang mga detailed na instruction ng Panginoon. There's no detailed instruction. He just instructed Jacob na bumalik doon sa pinanggalingan niya. Okay, and then what Jacob did was he called Raquel and Leah, and of course his whole household, and then spoke to them or talked to them about his plan and kung ano yung iniutos ng Panginoon sa kanya. Thank you po sa mga nanonood. So ito po yung ginawa ni Jacob. And of course, nag-agree yung dalawang asawa niya, yung magkapatid, si Raquel at Leah. So, ganun yung nangyari. And then Jacob put his wives and children on camels and he drove all his livestock in front of him. He packed all his belongings he had acquired in Padan Aram and set out for the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac lived. So, buhay pa si Isaac this time, Okay. At the time they left, Laban was some distance away, shearing his sheep. Raquel stole her father's household idols and took them with her. Jacob outwitted Laban the Aramean, for they set out secretly and never told Laban they were leaving. So Jacob took all his possessions with him and crossed the Euphrates River, heading for the hill country of Gilead. Of course, kasi galing nga sila sa Padan Aram. This is Mesopotamia. And then they were going to Canaan, ang present na Israel po ngayon. So, they have to cross the Euphrates River kasi if you remember, ang Mesopotamia is in between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. And they have to go to the north of Canaan. Magko-cross yan sila sa river, and then they will be crossing other rivers like Jabbok River and mga ganon. So if wala akong may pakitang mapa ngayon, I think I have it. We have a map in my Bible, pero hindi siya detailed as compared doon sa No, sorry. Okay, if you guys can see this one, okay, how will I show it? This is Mesopotamia. Okay. Okay, this one. And Jacob is coming from Padan Aram, like in this area. And then they are going here. And then going to Canaan. Of course, Canaan is just a strip of the coast, Okay. This way, and this is Canaan. Okay. Oh, it's too small. Anyway, yan nga po ang yung story niya. So they have to cross Euphrates River, and then hanggang dumating sila sa after 3 days journey, sabi ng text natin. Of course, saan na tayo? Okay, he started his journey and he sent his wives and children ahead of him. And then, after 3 days of journey, nalaman ni Laban na umalis si lumayas itong si Jacob, yung son-in-law niya, at kasama niya yung kanyang mga anak, tsaka yung dalawang anak ni Laban. And of course, na-upset si Laban dito, nagalit siya. And so, he gathered a group of his relatives and set out in hot pursuit. He caught up with Jacob 7 days later in the hill country of Gilead. But the previous night, God had appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream and told him, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. So makikita po natin dito yung pag-work ng Panginoon in favor of Jacob. Although he has tricked his father-in-law, God is still protected him. Hindi po binabayaan ng Panginoon si Jacob dito. And we will see kung ano po yung character ng Panginoon na makikita natin dito sa he was not condoning Jacob. Hindi po niya kinukonsente si Jacob, kundi of course kasi sinabi ng Panginoon na aalis siya, pero hindi niya sinabi na huwag kang magpaalam or gawin mo ito, gawin mong ganyan. Wala ngang detalye na sinabi ang Panginoon sa kanya. So Jacob did it his own way. So makikita po natin dito yung how Jacob acted, how Jacob of course he obeyed the Lord. Pero yung paraan niya ng paggawa ng mga bagay ay ayon sa kanyang own strength, ayon sa kanyang pamamaraan. Okay? So dito, Laban pursues Jacob. Hinabol ni Laban si Jacob ngayon at inabutan siya doon sa Gilead. Pero before niya maabutan si Jacob, na-warningan siya ng Panginoon na huwag mong galawin, huwag mong saktan si Jacob, sabi niya. And so, when Laban caught up with Jacob as he was camped in the hill country of Gilead, and he set up his camp not far from Jacob's. Okay? What do you mean by deceiving me like this? Laban demanded. How dare you drag my daughters away like prisoners of war? Why did you slip away secretly? Why did you deceive me, and why didn't you say you wanted to leave? I would have given you farewell feast with singing and music accompanied by tambourines and harps. Why didn't you let me kiss my daughters and grandchildren and tell them goodbye? You have acted very foolishly. I could destroy you, but God, the God of your father, appeared to me last night and warned me, leave Jacob alone. I understand your feeling that you must go, and your intense longing for your father's home, but why have you stolen my gods? So yun ang sabi ni Laban kay Jacob. And so, parang nagka-confront itong magbiyanan si Jacob tsaka si Laban. It is a confrontation. And so ano bang sagot ni Jacob? I rushed away because I was afraid, sabi niya kay Laban. I thought you would take your daughters from me by force, but as for your gods, see if you can find them and let the person who has taken them die. And if you find anything else that belongs to you, identify it before all these relatives of ours and I will give it back. But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the household gods. Okay, and then of course Laban went to search sa mga tents, sa mga belongings ni Jacob, pero wala siyang nakita. And he did not know na that time na si Rachel, yung nakaupo sa kanyang donkey, andun lang pala sa inuupuan ni Rachel, yung household gods niya. And this is a very pero ibang topic po ito, yung pagtago ni pagkuha ni Rachel sa household gods ng kanyang ama. It has something to do with our spiritual burden minsan, kung bakit tayo na sinusundan ng mga curses or mga trabaho ng kadiliman minsan, kasi may tinatago-tago pa rin tayo na hindi natin naiwan, or we cannot let go of the things na hindi naman talaga natin dapat taglayin. Okay? And so this one is the confrontation of Laban and Jacob. So dito naging honest si Jacob sa kanyang pananalita, ano. Sinumbat niya kay father-in-law niyang Laban yung mga ginawa ni Laban sa kanya. How he suffered, how Laban treated him, how he changed his wages 10 times. So sabi niya kay Laban, "What is my crime?" Sabi niya, "Ano bang kasalanan ko sa iyo? Bakit mo ito ginagawa sa akin?" Sabi niya. "For 20 years I have been with you caring for your flocks. In all the time your sheep and goats have never miscarried. In all those years I never used a single ram of yours for food. If any were attacked and killed by your wild animals, I never showed you the carcass and asked you to reduce the count of your flock. No, I took the loss myself. You made me pay for every stolen animal, whether it was taken in broad daylight or in the dark of the night. I worked for you through the scorching heat of the day and through the cold and sleepless nights. For 20 years I slaved in your house. I worked for 14 years earning your 2 daughters, and then 6 more years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. In fact, if the God of my father had not been on my side, the God of Abraham and the fearsome God of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen your abuse on my hard work. That is why He appeared to you last night and rebuked you." Okay. So ito yung rason ni Jacob kung bakit siya lumayas, na hindi siya nagpaalam. Kasi yung takot niya na he will go empty-handed, na hindi siya payagan ni Laban na umalis, na kasama niya yung kanyang mga anak, mga asawa, and then of course yung possession niya na pinagtrabahuan niya. Okay, reasonable naman po talaga yun sa bilang mga manggagawa, at bilang pamilyadong tao, of course. And then yun nga ang kung sa atin reasonable talaga na gawin ng isang tao yun. Okay. But we will look at it later on sa kung paano ini-deal ng Panginoon si Jacob. Okay, so that time nag-compromise si Laban, nag-compromise silang dalawa, and so nagkaroon sila ng treaty. Kaya yung treaty nila sa sa Gilead, that place was doon sila nag-camp, and then they made a treaty, they made a feast, and had a covenant meal, sabi sa chapter 31 verse 46. So they gathered stones and piled them in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the piles of stones to eat a covenant meal. To commemorate the event, Laban called the place Jegar Sahadutha, which means witness pile in Aramaic, and Jacob called it Galid, which means witness pile in Hebrew. Then Laban declared, "This pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant we have made today." This explains why it was called Galid, witness pile, but it was also called Mizpah, which means watchtower. For Laban, "May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters, if you marry other wives, God will see it, and if no one else does, He is a witness to this covenant between us." Okay, so yung side ni Laban, sabi niya, ito yung witness file natin, sabi niya. Kung imimistreat mo yung mga apo ko at magkakaroon ka ng iba pang mga asawa besides my daughters, then God will deal with you. Okay, sabi na, and then sabi pa niya, see this pile of stones, Laban continued, and see this monument I have set between us. They stand between us as a witness of our vows. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones or this monument to harm me. I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor to serve as judge between us. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Okay, Laban got up early in the morning and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Okay, as Jacob started on his way again, angels of God came to meet him. When Jacob saw them, he exclaimed, "This is God's camp." So he named it Mahanaim. Okay. So yun po ang naging ano ng yung naging pagtatagpo nila Laban at Jacob nung nagkaroon sila ng confrontation. They ended up making a deal or a treaty na mag-set up sila ng isang monument na magsisilbing witness na hindi sila magte-trespass sa bawat isa, na huwag nilang sasaktan or huwag silang lalampas sa boundary na yun para saktan lang ang bawat isa. Okay? So, we'll move sa chapter 32. Nung umalis ay nag-proceed si Jacob papunta sa Canaan. Ano ba yung ginawa niya? So, ang ginawa ni Jacob, he divided his possessions and his men. Okay? First, Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau, who is living in the region of Seir in the land of Edom. Of course, yung Edom is south of Israel ngayon, kasi doon yun nagsisettle si Esau. He told them, "Give this message to my master. Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. Until now I have been living with Uncle Laban, and now I own cattle, donkeys, flocks, and sheep and goats, and many servants, both men and women. I have sent these messengers to inform you, my lord, of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to me." Okay, so ito yung ginawa ni strategy ni Jacob. He sent his messengers na sabihan si Esau na darating si Jacob at marami siyang mga servants, mga possessions na gusto niyang ibigay sa iyo as ibigay sa iyo, of course. And then of course he hopes that Esau will welcome him. Okay? After delivering the message, the messenger returned to Jacob and reported, "We met your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you with an army of 400 men." Jacob was terrified at the news. He divided his household along with the flocks and herds and camels in two groups. He thought, if Esau meets one group and attacks it, perhaps the other group can escape. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my grandfather Abraham, the God of my father Isaac, O Lord, you told me, return to your own land and to your relatives, and you promised me I will treat you kindly. I am not worthy of all the unfailing love and faithfulness you have shown to me, your servant. When I left home and crossed the Jordan River, I owned nothing except a walking stick. Now my household fills two large camps. O Lord, please rescue me from the hand of my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to attack me along with my wives and children. But you promised me I will surely treat you kindly, and I will multiply your descendants until they become as numerous as the sands along the seashore, too many to count." Jacob stayed where he was for the night. Then he selected these gifts from his possession to present to his brother Esau: 200 male goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He divided these animals into herds and assigned each of different servants. Then he told his servant, "Go ahead of me with the animals, but keep some distance between these herds." He gave these instructions to the men, leading the first group. "When my brother Esau meets you, he will ask, 'Whose servants are you? Where are you going? Who owns these animals?' You must reply, 'They belong to your servant Jacob, but they are gift for his master Esau. Look, he is coming right behind us.'" Jacob gave the same instruction to the second and third herdsmen and to all who followed behind the herds. "You must say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, but be sure to say, 'Look, your servant Jacob is coming behind us.'" Jacob thought, "I will try to appease him by sending gifts ahead of me. When I see him in person, perhaps he will be friendly to me." So the gifts were sent on ahead, while Jacob himself spent the night in the camp. Okay, so ito yung strategy ni napakayaman pala talaga niya. Ang dami niyang mga herds and animals, imagine. So, dinivide niya ng tatlo yung kanyang mga possessions, mga slaves. Kahit yung family niya, hinati pa niya. Okay? And then, he stayed behind. Maganda yung strategy niya, as parang commander lang siya ng army. Okay, so wala namang problema doon. But then we will look at kung ano yung pinaka-climax na ginawa ng Panginoon sa kanya. Makikita din po natin dito kung ano yung reaksyon ng Panginoon. Ano ba yung gusto ng Panginoon sana na ginawa niya dati or simula pa lang. Okay. Okay, so that time he was alone kasi inisend na nga niyang tatlong factions yung kanyang mga ari-arian, mga tao, ang kanyang pamilya. And then he himself spent that night in the camp. During that night, Jacob got up and took his two wives, his two servant wives, and his 11 sons and crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp. Okay, so pinauna niya nga yung mga anak niya, yung lahat ng mga possessions niya, across Jabbok River. And he was alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win in the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of his socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won." "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. "Why do you want to know my name?" the man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, which means face of God, for he said, "I have seen the face of God, yet my life has been spared." The sun was rising as Jacob left Peniel, and he was limping because of his injury to his limb. Even today, the people of Israel don't eat the tendon near the hip socket because of what happened that night when the man strained the tendon of Jacob's hip. Okay, so that ends the chapter 32. Okay, so Sa chapter 32 verse 16, sabi po dito is 16, he divided these animals into herds. Okay. Jacob instructed his servants to go ahead of him, passing over the Jabbok River, which flows into the Jordan River from the east, about 15 miles north of the Dead Sea. So, yung Dead Sea, of course, ay nasa, my map is too small. It's too small for you to see. Anyway. Ayan. So, Jacob is coming from here, going down po. Ang Jabbok River is somewhere here. And so, when he crossed the Jabbok River, his possessions and his animals, kasi yung Edom is here, yung south ng Israel. Edom is here. And so, when Jacob was in the camp, he sent messengers to the south to Esau. Now, when Esau heard that Jacob was coming, he went to meet Esau. So, salubungin niya si Esau. And here in this part, while Jacob was wrestling with God, andun yung three factions naman ng kanyang mga ari-arian at mga tauhan ay papunta towards Esau. And now, okay. So, ito yung yung pinaka-climax kung bakit ko ito pinamagatan na when you have exhausted all your efforts on your defense, kasi from the time na nag-acquire si Jacob ng kanyang mga possessions sa Padan Aram, all he did was to rely on himself. Okay? He relied on his own strength. He relied on himself alone, kasi wala naman siya talagang ibang katiwalaan kundi ang sarili na. He has no choice but to remain strong, and apparently sa kanyang sitwasyon walang makakatulong sa kanya. Yung mga anak niya, mga bata pa. So he had to take all his decisions by himself, decide by himself, and execute his own decisions. So kung ano yung maisip niya na gusto niyang gawin, he can do it. And this is the amusing part, kasi yung pagkatao niya ay all he did was like trickery, yung panlalamang na lang ang yung pamamaraan niya ay parang panlalamang na lahat. That time, we can say na wala namang instruction ang Panginoon na huwag niyang gawin yun, or don't do this, don't do that. Kasi of course, wala pa yung 10 Commandments noon that time, later on pa yung dumating yung binigay ng Panginoon yung 10 Commandments sa mga Israelites. This time, God was talking to them face to face, or hindi naman as in but then God was directly talking to them. Okay, na walang mga hindi kagaya ng mga Israelites later on na kailangan may namamagitan sa kanila. Ngayon, he was talking to the patriarchs directly, instructing them, and he had no detailed instruction kung paano nila gawin At makita po natin dito yung yung paraan ni Jacob, hindi walang detalye na instruction ng Panginoon. So he decided by himself kung ano yung pamamaraan niya. And of course, in his situation, he had to rely on himself. Now, is it does God favor his ways? Yung mga pamamaraan ba ni Jacob ay naayon sa kagustuhan ng Panginoon or according to God's ways? Okay, we can see sa kung paano nakipag-wrestle si Jacob sa Panginoon, this later part, this from verses 22 to 32 of chapter 32. Jacob wrestles with God, and then ang nakakatuwa na sinabi ng Panginoon dito ay, from now on you will be called Israel because you have fought with God and with men and have won. Tatawagin kitang Israel kasi nakipaglaban ka sa mga tao at sa Panginoon at nanalo ka, sabi ng angel sa kanya. Okay, let me read some of the commentaries here. Sabi ng commentary po dito sa verse 24, kino-comment po dito yung chapter 24 to 32 ng passage na ito na Jacob left the camp alone at hanggang umalis siya doon sa Peniel. Sabi po dito, this is one of the Bible's mysterious narratives. The man is identified by Hosea as an angel of God, and Hosea as an angel. That is in Hosea chapter 12 verse 4. The importance of the narrative is Jacob's willingness to contend with God at the time of his desperate need. He knows God has willed to bless him, and he will settle for nothing less than his full inheritance. That is in verse 26. Sabi ng Panginoon, let go of me for the dawn is breaking. Pero sabi ni Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. So, hindi kita pakakawalan hangga't hindi mo ako binibindisyonan, sabi ni Jacob sa Panginoon dito. Okay. So apparently, Jacob knew that it was the Lord, and he really struggled. He really struggled to get the blessing na para sa kanya. Alam niya yung para sa kanya na blessing, but he knew that he did something na hindi maganda sa Panginoon, kaya anong tawag nito? He had to fight for it na hindi niya pakakawalan kasi alam niyang yun ay para sa kanya. Pero kung bakit kailangan niyang makipag pa sa Panginoon, bakit hindi na lang ibinigay ng Panginoon na kusa? Because it is Jacob's character na he had been doing something na tricky, yung way na pag-acquire niya ng mga properties niya, and then yung mga blessings, yung birthright ng kapatid niya. It has always been that way, and the Lord was teaching him na the Lord was teaching him that he needs to surrender to the Lord. He needs to acknowledge na yung blessing na binibigay ng Panginoon ay galing sa na binibigay ng Panginoon ay galing sa Panginoon. Okay. His contending tenacity causes him to again prevail. Okay. Okay, so and then sabi dito sa verse 27, the man obviously knew Jacob's name. He was made to say it because of its meaning, supplanter or deceiver. He must acknowledge his weakness before he is transformed. Okay? So, ito po yung sabi ng angel ng Panginoon. Ano, what is your name? Sabi niya kay Jacob. And then Jacob replied, my name is Jacob. So, from now on, sabi ng angel, you will no longer be called Jacob, but you will be called Israel because you have fought with God and with men and have won. So, ano ba yung sinasabi ng Panginoon dito? Na Jacob should have done before. Okay, the name Jacob is means supplanter or deceiver, ano? Una't-una pa lang ganun yung since birth, ganun naman talaga yung nasabi na pangalan ni Jacob. He was a deceiver, a supplanter, and all his life until this point, he has been living as a deceiver, as a supplanter. And bakit kailangang tanungin ng Panginoon yung pangalan niya this time? Kasi yun nga, God wants him to admit who he is, kung sino ba talaga siya, ano ba talaga siya. Okay? Jacob knew that he is a deceiver, that he is a supplanter. Pero hindi niya isinosurrender ito sa Panginoon. He did his own way. The way he acquired his properties, yung pag-deal niya kay Laban, at of course, lahat na in his past life, he has been a deceiver. And then now, the Lord wants him to admit who he is. Okay? Hindi ka magkakaroon, ibig sabihin, hindi ka magkakaroon ng new identity unless you know who you are first. Sino ba talaga ako? At ano ba yung gusto ng Panginoon para sa akin, ganun. Okay, so this time he has to admit that he is a deceiver, he is a supplanter before the Lord, before he receives the new blessing ng Panginoon sa kanya. Okay? So now he had to confess that he is a deceiver and a supplanter, and then the Lord gave him the name Israel after that. Hindi ka na tatawagin na supplanter at deceiver, kundi ikaw ay, anong ibig sabihin ng Israel? Israel can mean prince with God, or he strives with God, or may God persevere. In spite of his character weaknesses, God commends him for his prevailing attitude. He is a fighter. As such, Hosea sees him as a model to be emulated whenever one is facing difficulty or a need for character transformation. Okay. So one meaning of Israel is prince with God. Ganda ng meaning, ano? Prince with God, or he strives with God, or may God persevere. So, this is na-appreciate ng Panginoon yung character ni Jacob dito na he is willing to fight for the best, for his blessing. Ito yung pagkakaiba nila kay Esau, ano, kasi kung maalala nyo, Esau despised his birthright in exchange of a meal. Pero this time, makikita natin dito kung paano nakipaglaban si Jacob para sa blessing na gusto niya. Okay? He really strived it. He strived with God. And he won. He did not settle for less. Sabi nga ng commentary natin, he did not settle for less na papuntahin mo lang ako dyan sa makarating lang ako sa Canaan, okay na ako. No. He had to claim the best of the blessing that God has promised him. Yun ang maganda sa character ni Jacob, makikita natin dito after he admitted his need of God. Now, the title of ito yung title ng usapin natin is When You Have Exhausted All Your Efforts in Your Defense. When you have exhausted all your efforts in your defense, and you have no one to turn to because you are all exhausted, and you have no one to turn to except God Himself. You have to acknowledge that you need God, and all your strength has ended. God has your back. Wala pong tayong mga tao minsan yung mga pamamaraan natin gusto natin nilalagay natin sa kamay natin, yung mga bagay-bagay na gusto nating gawin. We want to do this, want to do that, and we never acknowledge the ways of the Lord. We knew the word of God. Kasi like Jacob, God spoke to him na, umalis ka na dyan, bumalik ka na doon. He has the direction of God, but his ways were his own ways. Hindi siya nag-seek ng pamamaraan ng Panginoon. He strived with his own. Until this time na nakipag-wrestle siya sa Panginoon. And the Lord has to point him out that he has to admit his need of the Lord. Okay, ito ka noon, sabi niya. Ito yung pagkatao mo. You are a supplanter, you are a deceiver. And he's going to the promised land this time, and also he has to change. He has to leave his old self behind. And when he enters the promised land, he should be a new man, yes, he should have a new identity na hindi na yung old self niya yung kinikerry niya, kundi ibang tao na siya. It is a transformation, sabi ng commentary natin dito. He must acknowledge his weakness before his transformation. So ito po yung pinaka natin dito, pinaka main climax ng story natin dito. When Jacob wrestled with God, it is because Jacob wanted the best from God, pero hindi niya alam kung paano niya ito makukuha, and the Lord taught him a lesson. Ito yung part ng this is a part of the discipline na natakil natin last time from chapter 30, when God disciplined Jacob. And this is still a continuation of how God disciplined Jacob in his ways, na God was teaching him not to rely on himself, but to rely on God. And kaya sabi ng komentaryo din natin dito na God commended Jacob of his tenacity. Kasi yung blessing na mismo parang makikita mo na talagang ini-commend siya ng Panginoon na you have wrestled with God and have prevailed. Sabi ng angel ng Panginoon dito, no? So it is one way of commending yung effort ni Jacob. Although he often does things his own way, pero hindi siya, I mean, hindi siya madaling mag-give up sa kanyang mga pinaglalaban. And it is a commendable attitude, like persistence, perseverance. O, di ba? Kaya nga sa New Testament, pag mababasa natin yung mga sinasabi ni Jesus Christ, yung persistent widow, mga ganon, yung mga blessings na binibigyan ng Panginoon, we should ask with persistence, with persistent attitude. The 10 virgins, yung mga ganon na mga parables ng Panginoon, makikita natin dito how God revealed Himself na we have to seek His blessings with persistence. Na nakafocus tayo sa sa blessing na yun, hindi yung madali tayong masway sa mga bagay-bagay na ini-offer ng it is very contrasting sa character ni Esau that before na he traded his birthright for just a meal. Okay. Kung bakit ganon na lang yung I mean, it is spoken by the Lord, pero yung character din kasi ni Esau is he was hot-tempered and he easily gives up. Wala siyang yun nga yung sabi ko nung mga nakaraan ng mga videos na last lessons natin, he has no bottom line, na madali lang niyang ini-give up yung mahalaga sa kanya. So, yun po ang makita natin. But the main thing na gusto kong i-point out dito is our reliance sa Panginoon. When we have all exhausted our efforts like Jacob, at the end of the line, we come to God and we have to admit who we are before we receive the blessing of the Lord. Ano ba sa sitwasyon natin? Sa ating mga sitwasyon, sa ating buhay, na ginawa natin ang ating mga lahat ng ating mga pamamaraan at akala natin ay yun ay nag-work, pero at the end of the day we feel at loss na parang nawala lahat. They have all gone ahead of us, na nawala lang lahat sila and we are left alone by ourselves. And then the Lord will come to us and say, ano na? Nawala na lahat sa'yo, ano? You have nothing but yourself. And you have to admit that you are powerless, that you have to admit that you have nothing before the Lord. And we have to admit, I have to include myself, we have to admit that we are powerless. We have to admit that we have nothing. Apart from the Lord, we have nothing. So ito po yung pinaka lesson na makikita natin dito. And ang tanong ko lang, why did God allow Jacob to do these things, na mga trickery na ito sa kanyang sa kanyang buhay? Why would God allow Jacob to do these things? It is not because God is condoning him, he is na kinokonsente ng Panginoon yung ginagawa ni Jacob. Pero makikita natin dito yung katangian ng Panginoon that God is faithful. Because God is faithful sa kanyang promise kay Abraham. Okay? Kaya hindi niya pinaparusahan itong ginagawa ni Jacob na ito. Kung tutuusin, ni-rebuke pa nga niya si Laban nung Laban pursued Jacob. Ang Panginoon pang nag-rebuke kay Laban na wag mong saktan si Jacob, sabi ng Panginoon kay Laban. So it is not because God is condoning the wrongs that Jacob did, but it is because God is faithful na pinoprotektahan niya si Jacob dahil sa promise niya kay Abraham at kay Isaac. And of course, God also promised Jacob himself doon nung natulog si Jacob doon sa may daan, and then the Lord spoke to him in a dream na he will treat him kindly, he will be with him until he returns to his father's house. So yun po yung makikita natin dito. It is not because God favors the wrong that Jacob has been doing, but because it is because God was faithful to his promise. Okay? So once again, when all of our efforts has been exhausted and we come at the end of the line, when all our possessions have gone away, have been used up, all our families have been gone, wala sila sa atin, and then we are left alone with ourselves, there is nothing we can do without God, and we have to surrender ourselves and admit kung sino talaga tayo. We may pretend to be strong, we may pretend to be someone sa mata ng mga tao, and this is very common sa atin. But when we are left alone sa Panginoon, who are we in front of the Lord? And it is also very important na yung character ni Jacob dito, yung gusto talaga nating mangyari. Of course, it is yung kiniklaim natin na blessing na na alam natin na binigay ng Panginoon sa atin na hindi pa nangyayari. We should be persistent. Kung yun na lang, yung heavenly blessing na lang ang gusto nating i-claim sa Panginoon. The most important blessing is when we come to the Lord alone and ask Him of one thing that we want from this life. What is the one thing that we want to ask God if we are left alone by ourselves with the Lord? Pag nakakausap natin ang Panginoon at mag-isa lang tayo, ano ba yung hinihingi natin sa Kanya? Is it for our enemies, for those people who hate us to suffer, or that God would give us, bless us, or whatever na mga worldly material things or mga worldly desires natin? Or should we ask of the most important thing, that is the heavenly blessing? Okay, so in this case, makita po natin na Jacob admitted that he is a deceiver, he is a supplanter, and he he asked for the most important blessing. And sabi niya, bless me. I will not let you go unless you bless me. And so, alam ng Panginoon yung blessing, alam ni Jacob yung blessing na para sa kanya na galing sa Panginoon. He has been blessed by his father Isaac. He has been blessed by the Lord in his dream, in his encounter with God. But this time, he still wanted to affirm na yung blessing talaga ay para sa kanya. And one more thing is yung transformation natin. Pag na-encounter natin ang Panginoon, when we admit, if we admit our old self, yung we honestly admit na yung mga nagawa natin or kung sino tayo nung nakaraan, i-confess natin. And the Lord gave us the identity that you're a child of God, you should act like this and this way. Yun na po tayo, hindi na po tayo pag lumabas na tayo sa presensya ng Panginoon, we should not be the same. We should be yun nga, kaya nga sabi ng Bible, Jacob was limping when he came out. When he came out of the camp. Kasi it is a sign that God has touched him. It has a spiritual implication sa ating encounter sa Panginoon. We may be limping when we come out from the presence of God, but we are complete. The blessing is complete. Sa mata ng mundo, kulang tayo, may kulang sa atin. Pag tayo ay nagfo-focus or pag tayo ay na-change, na-transform ng Panginoon. Pero sa mata ng Panginoon, tayo ay kompleto. Okay? So I hope we learned something from this. And I pray that God will bless His word and will continue to bless it and supply whatever is lacking sa mga nasabi ko kanina o nasabi kong ito. So may God bless you all, and this is chapter 32, 31 and 32 of Genesis. So once again, we will be continuing this next week, and I hope that you will join me again and watch later on sa mga videos po na gagawin ko. So maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat, and may God bless us all. Good night po sa lahat. Bye. Kung hindi niyo pa po nagagawa, please click subscribe dyan sa baba, and then the notification bell, and also please don't forget to like the videos para po mai-recommend ng ni Lolo YouTube para maraming makapanood po. Okay po, so maraming salamat ulit. Bye-bye.